Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 52nd episode of the Exploring Antinatalism podcast, a podcast all about the subject of antinatalism created by antinatalists. My name is Amanda Oldfan-Sukanik, formerly known as Forever Wolf Films on YouTube, and today I'm speaking with prolific antinatalist YouTuber and author of several books, including Love, Void, Love, The Book of Naught, and the newly released The Point, Evilus Annihilus Uls, also known as Josiah S. Cooper. So welcome to the Exploring Antinatalism podcast, Josiah.
Hello, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. Josiah, I'm so happy to have you on the show today. I don't remember exactly when the first time I saw one of your videos was, but they had a huge effect on me, huge impact, and they continue to. It's a candid, haunting, sometimes tragic, sometimes triumphant portrait of a life that you've shown us, struggling, suffering, but always creating, always making, always the artist. And I just want you to know before we begin today, just how much you've inspired me and how important I think your work really is. In addition to this, there just simply are not many people in the antinatalist and ethicist community that have been making videos around these subjects for as long as you have. And I think that's quite significant. You kind of represent what I think of as like second wave ethilism, if that were to be a thing. That's what I would make sense. That would make, that's what I would call it. Which let's say was around 2013, 2014. And that was a fascinating time, frankly. Few remember now. A lot of that history has been wiped away. A lot of those channels are gone. It's very sad. It was a very special time for me, and I'm excited to relive some of that with you through celebrating your work here today. So just to start out with the basics, firstly, who is Josiah S. Cooper?
That's a hard question to answer, but I think I'm going to get into some metaphysics here, but I think the who is kind of ambiguous. Corey Anton, I remember him saying something like that, but I genuinely think that like who we are is kind of like this ambiguous thing that words can never really define directly. But what I am is kind of a bit easier to describe, so I guess we'll get into that. But I guess currently I would consider myself more of a thinker than a doer, but I'm pretty reclusive. I don't see a lot of people on an average basis. This is like, just for example, I rarely ever talk to anyone, but so this is kind of different, and but I wanted to do it, so yeah. And I guess I have some mental health history and stuff like that I guess would be considered a part of who I am or what I am. I love music. I've always been kind of into philosophy for a pretty long time now. So I guess that's a short answer to who I am at this moment.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I mean, were you always somebody that made a lot of art, Josiah, playing music, drawing? When did all that begin for you?
I was pretty imaginative as a kid. It kind of began when I was around, it's kind of always been a thing, I would say. The philosophy kind of started when I was in my teenage years. I read the book of The Trial and Death of Socrates. And that's kind of what got me into this like thinking thing, where he was put to death for tainting the youth. And that kind of interested me a lot because I grew up in a evangelical Christian household that was mostly just, the word of the Bible is the truth and that's it. And I grew up in we would go to conferences and stuff like that. So it was pretty religious upbringing. And for whatever reason, I just was way more curious about everything outside of that. And so I just never stopped exploring from where I grew up.
Yeah, you're just a natural intellectual and Had a very curious mind. I can definitely see that. Absolutely. Josiah, why are you an antinatalist?
I would say I'm kind of I would describe myself as I'm pretty like I like to say that I'm a very open person. So generally I lean towards pessimistic kind of ideas, but I'm very capable of thinking about I'm very capable of thinking broadly about any topic. So with antinatalism in particular, I would say it's because life is very cyclical. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It's lots of pain to pleasure and over, and it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to create it if you see life as just this looping process over and over again. And I think that creation and destruction are inherently aggressive acts. I don't think you can really create a life without being aggressive in some way. And I think if you're trying to not be an aggressive person, I think procreation isn't really something you can do because it's inherently a very assertive act to force someone to be here and to take away their life. So that's the short answer I have
Very,
for you.
very well said. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you at the end. No, I don't know. I don't remember who was the first person to say it, but like, there's no more aggressive thing you can do to a person than either kill them or give birth to them. And yeah, I think that's just an absolute truth. How did you originally discover antinatalism, and when and how did you first discover videos on the subject through YouTube?
It was just a random occurrence. I was just looking on YouTube. I spend so much time on YouTube that I like
Me
it's
too.
ridiculous how much time I've spent on YouTube, but just watching videos. And I just clicked on there's like a back then there used to be like a feed of like suggested channels, and I clicked on Paul's Ego. I looked on his feed, and then he had the Amend Him Onision video, and that was my first video of him. It wasn't about antinatalism right away, but
It was about
that's
self-harm,
definitely
I think, right?
what.
It was about self-harm, I think, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
about suicide, and yeah, that's definitely what brought me into it. So it was kind of because of it was because of his personality, and I just kind of resonated with that kind of dark humor and stuff like that. So that's what pulled me in for sure.
Cool. Yeah, I have a very good memory of that video for sure. Outside of Wikipedia, the word antinatalism is still not included or defined by any dictionary in the world in any language. And in addition to this, even the Wikipedia definition keeps changing. So, do you have any thoughts on how antinatalism should be defined?
Um, I think that's I think the simplest way to describe it is just people who think that human life should end, and that would be the simplest answer for a majority of people. But you know, antinatalism kind of can connect to so many different ethical considerations like veganism and right to die, and even atheism. It might connect to that in some way. So I would say that the simplest definition seems to be just people who think that human life should end, and it can be for various reasons, but that would be a very simple definition I could think of on the top of my head.
You touched on this just briefly, but how do you feel antinatalism intersects, if at all, with other social and ethical issues such as atheism, veganism, and the right to die?
Well, I think atheism can bring about this idea that there's just no purpose. It's just kind of a cosmic brutality to be born. And without this notion that there's some greater, grander purpose, I feel like you naturally lean towards this pessimistic conclusion that's life, we're pretty much better off not being here because life is just so brutal for a majority of consciousness, and most people don't go through life without at least a little bit of hardship. But most people are convinced that we should be here because they think there is some purpose. And I would say that's one reason I can think of that atheism would connect to antinatalism, at least for one example. And veganism, that just, if you care about suffering, then naturally I feel like veganism would be a part of that, and the right to die.
Absolutely, 100% agree. Anti-procreation is sometimes broken up into four general schools of thought. There's antinatalism, which is like its own thing, but it's also the umbrella term. There's ephilism, there's vehement, and then there's child-free. Can you share with me any thoughts you might have on each of those?
I feel like the child-free movement is mostly just people who are like, we're kind of fed up with, there's like a feminist perspective to it as well, which is like women have been kind of raised to be expected to be like these child bearers,
Yeah.
and they're kind of sick of that a little bit. There's a little bit of that, just being sick of this is the expectation of society. And then there's just people who want to be more free to do things they want to do. And that's kind of more the casual end of antinatalism, I guess, if you were going to connect it. But voluntary human extinction movement seems to be primarily about the environment and stuff like that. And, that's definitely one reason why humans can stop reproducing. I mean, we haven't helped in a lot of ways.
Right.
And ephilism seems to be more focused on just the suffering in general.
Yeah.
And that's primarily where I would fall into.
Yeah, absolutely. Myself as well, definitely. Aside from YouTube, do you engage with the antinatalist community on other social media platforms? And in addition to, have you ever met an antinatalist in person, another antinatalist in person?
I actually don't think I have, but I haven't like tried to meet anyone. But in Tucson, I feel like we're we're pretty outnumbered, it seems like, but I think we would be surprised at how pessimism is kind of becoming more and more of a thing in general.
Yeah.
Especially because of the last 2 years, I would say it's kind of more pessimistic kind of mood.
Absolutely.
And I definitely think that's hopeful for more people to get into this than ever before. And yeah, I forget what was the the original question, but
Oh, no worries, no worries. Yeah. No, and do you like interact with the community on other social media platforms?
I would say I used to earlier on. It was more recently, I just kind of got more reclusive and just thinking and on my own. I would say it was more helpful earlier on because it kind of gave me this sense of like camaraderie.
Sure, of course.
And I would say that's definitely a reason to interact and engage, and just, the relatability of, just feeling kind of hopeless, stuff like that.
In addition to being a philosophical position, antinatalism over the last 10 years or so has become a social movement as well. And since 2019, antinatalist activism actually started to leave the barriers of social media, and we began to see the emergence of things akin to more traditional activism, like street outreach, meetups, and even the formation of, like, let's call them proto NGOs. So there's Child Free India, Stop Having Kids, Antinatalism International, which is my collective, and the AAJP, the AAPJ. I always get that screwed up, which is the Association of Anti-Procreationalism in Japan. Are you familiar with any of these groups? Do you have any thoughts on them?
I don't know. I think it's good that it seems like there's more and more just people organizing together and
Yeah,
making it more visible for the public. I think that's good. I'm not too familiar with the, I guess, just all the different things there's just so many things going on nowadays. I feel
yeah,
overwhelmed. I'm kind
totally.
of like, oh my gosh, I would have to spend hours trying to catch up, but there's a lot going on now. It feels like there's a lot going on it would just it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, no, absolutely. There is a lot going on, and it is overwhelming to a large extent. I think for everybody to some extent, and it's just so different than the antenatal world that like we first came into. You know, where there was a couple of us on
Oh yeah.
YouTube, couple of people in these little groups on Facebook, but it really has exploded. And as you said earlier, I do think the last couple of years have gotten a lot of people to that point, thinking about these things at least. I get the sense that, like me, finding antinatalism, finding in Mendham's videos, finding this community was like a huge thing in your life, like a huge, tremendously meaningful event. And it was absolutely the same for myself as well. Can you talk a little bit about that, about what it was like finding this content and other people talking about these ideas for the first time?
I would say it definitely gave me this sense that I wasn't as alone as I felt like I was. I was kind of isolating a lot, and I kind of needed some sort of like thing to be a part of, and it just happened to resonate with me the most out of everything I could find. I couldn't really find anything to be a part of at the time, and so I used it as an outlet for basically many years, and I still plan to. It's just it's not in the same way where I'm like in person, and so but I definitely want to keep on doing more, and maybe who knows what's going to be next, but it definitely is a very big support structure for, I guess, if you're feeling super isolated and alone.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, especially because I think there is a lot of creativity in antinatalism. I mean, we're a very creative set of people, and so there's a lot of there's a lot of room to have work appreciated.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of work. Yeah, you could. There's still tons of work that could be done, but yeah, we'll see what comes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll see. If I'm not mistaken, you've said in a video somewhere that when you first came to the community, it was, or found these videos, and stuff, it was around 2012. Do you remember if in Mendham had started talking about ephilism yet? Or were you still in the pre-ephilism era?
I think there was that Crown Jewels video of the Gladiator War, and
Yes,
I
absolutely.
think that was right around. I was watching his videos for like a year prior to that, but around when I came in, I feel like the ephilism thing was just starting to pick off a little bit more with that video. I feel like that was a little bit before I came into it, but I definitely started watching videos. I feel like before the ephilism thing it was kind of just picking off, I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That definitely makes a lot of sense. It started sometime in 2012, but I always, it's hard to put that marker on exactly when. So thank you for that. What do you remember about YouTube antinatalism, ephilism from that era? Like, who were the biggest, video producers? What was it like?
I remember there being kind of more. I feel like there was. I'm not 100% sure because I've been kind of reclusive these past few years, but I would say that I felt like there was a lot of interaction. There was like people going to live meetings on, I forget, it was like tiny chat or something, and
Yes,
there was a
sure.
lot of that. And I felt like at the time it was kind of like this. I don't know. I felt like it was like the heyday. The heyday. I don't know.
It kind of was.
I felt pretty comfortable around that time, but yeah, I would say it was. I felt like there was a lot of interaction during that time, but I'm not so 100% sure on how it would compare to now. So maybe you can say what you think on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I think it was. I think there was a lot of activity during that time. I think it a lot changed. So it's like, all of those websites that allowed multi feed live streaming like Tiny Chat and Stickam, like that all died. Like that's all gone. Like, I think those sites are completely gone now, and get Google Hangouts took over, but like nobody really liked it, and it's not a great platform. So there's Zoom now, but it's just not the same kind of thing, where people
Yeah, it
can
doesn't
just
have the same kind of atmosphere
exactly,
of
yeah,
like people just coming and going from like a live room on Tiny Chat, and
yeah,
it would just
yeah.
like continue on for like hours and hours.
Oh, like
Yeah,
8-9 hours at a time. Yeah, and
yeah.
all kinds of stuff would happen. And I'm glad we saved a lot of that. I know you did recordings of a lot of those things. That's good. That's good that we have all that stuff. Yeah, the community is very different now. I mean, it's even hard to compare. I would say that like at that time, the YouTube world had a much greater dominance, and because of a lot of factors, that's definitely changed. And yeah, it's hard to even characterize now, to be
Do
honest.
you do you think it is picking up? Like it's still do you think it still has a pretty good momentum?
I think it does. I think that, so when I was talking about the activism sort of leaving the social media world in 2019, I don't know if you heard about any of this, but there was a guy named Raphael Samuel in India. Perhaps you've heard about
Yeah.
it, but he, for our audience that maybe is not aware, he threatened to sue his parents, and this was a huge international, like it was everywhere. Like people were freaking out about it everywhere. And I really do think since that time, it's become a much more household word. There's definitely more coverage of it as the years go by. I think the community is much more divided than it ever has been before. There's a lot more open disagreement. The other part of it that we'll talk about in a bit is that there's not as healthy as an opposite side. So like when we were making videos back in the old days, there were people like Conference Report and the Modern Mystic and Piro and Professor. There was a lot of pushback, but
Yeah.
it was and some of it was crap, but like, from the peanut gallery. But there was a lot of academics in there.
It was
Some of those
still
people I
very
just,
stimulating.
it
Like
was great.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even when
definitely
I
got the conversation going for a while. Yeah.
100%. I mean, even where I vehemently, no pun intended, disagreed, with the opposite side, it was really good. Like we had all these foils, to kind of fight with.
Ironically, I feel like I'm like one of the only like I feel like if there was to be a devil's advocate, I feel like I could probably do the best job. Unfortunately, it's kind of one of those things where I feel like I'm like I said, I feel like I'm a diverse person, but I
Yeah.
definitely am just leaning towards pessimism.
Sure. No, and I would agree with you actually. Like, in reviewing I reviewed a lot of your videos, some of which I hadn't seen in many years. I mean, you did do a couple of Devil's Advocate videos, which were great. Would you like to take a moment to talk about some of your Devil's Advocate perspectives?
Yeah, I would say the one biggest thing is for a long time, a lot of people who would criticize and mend him would be like, saying his calling suffering bad is arbitrary. They would say it's arbitrary, and that would send him off, and he would be like this big old thing you would see over and over and over. People saying calling suffering bad is just arbitrary and doesn't really mean anything. And I would say the thing I never really heard is just, if you call suffering bad, suffering already is like this intrinsically repulsive force. And so I would say that if you call suffering bad, it kind of doesn't really say much more than what we already know suffering is. And so I would say this whole value thing is primarily a judgment that's being made about suffering. And that's really what's being kind of projected onto suffering beyond it just being this intrinsically repulsive thing, which I do think it is. But beyond that, I would say ultimately it's a judgment that is being made. And it took me the longest time to like, for a while it would be like suffering is bad and suffering sucks. And that all kind of resonates. It's just, I would say that I can see that for a judgment that's being made. And I would say that I can also just see that, even though I don't like life, I can still say, okay, that's just my judgment. That's just me not liking it. But at the same time, I can also step back and go, well, if people see life for what it is, if they see it as this cyclical thing of pain to pleasure, and we're not really going anywhere, people aren't going to want to create life. And I think you have to be inherently doing some kind of aggressive move when you create life in the first place. So I think minimally, someone who is not being aggressive is not going to create life, nor are they going to take it away. So I'd say from that minimalist perspective, ultimately, I would say that creating life is just not something you can do unless you're acting aggressively, or if you just unless you're completely ignorant of what you're doing. So that was a bit of a long thing, but that's just a little bit of what I have to say.
Yeah, no, I think I get you. So like, if I'm understanding correctly, it's like, yes, we can, it's objectively bad, like we can call it that, but to make you're saying that you're sensitive to the fact that we're also placing this subjective value on top of it, which
Well, I
might
would
not.
say, like, when you say it's objectively bad, I would say that it's intrinsically repulsive.
Okay.
So like, you don't ever want to suffer for the sake of it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Sure,
so like
yes.
there's masochists and there's stuff like that, but they usually have some kind of psychological need to, like, they feel like unworthy, so they like cut themselves to make themselves feel less bad about themselves.
Right.
And that would be more like a workaround around this. Pain is intrinsically repulsive, but if you just take pain by itself with no escape, it's just like a repulsive thing that everyone doesn't want. It's just their psychologies kind of get in the way, and yeah, there you are.
Yeah, no, I think I get you. No, thank you for your thoughts on that. Yeah, very interesting. I'm curious, did you ever get to interact with derived energy, before everything went to hell and he died?
No, not so much, but I did follow along on what happened to him for sure.
Yeah. I need to. I'm at some point going to do a special episode about all of that. Absolutely tragic. All right. Well, we talked already a little bit about the other side of people on the other side of the argument. Do you have any thoughts though about like what it means for us that like we've sort of lost that pushback?
I would say people I would say the one thing I would say that can happen is that people just kind of stay within their zone, and the ideas aren't really challenged, and they
Yeah.
might not be as good as arguers or presenters of the idea if they don't have to constantly kind of face the scrutiny.
Right.
So I would say scrutiny is pretty good for the argument, because you just get better at arguing if you keep on facing people who aren't believing the same thing.
Right.
So it is kind of there is kind of like a stagnation that's probably, I guess, could result if no one challenges it.
For sure. I 100% agree. Okay. Well, I would now love to begin a more proper discussion of your work and your YouTube channel. So you have a number of different channels. There's the Josiah S. Cooper channel, Anomic Individual 87, Evilus Annihilus Ools, The Non-Denominator, W.U.L.D. I know you have a couple of others besides that, but those are the main ones, unless I'm forgetting some important one. So you began watching Inmendum and antinatalist videos in 2012, and then started making AN videos sometime in 2013, unless I'm wrong. May I ask what finally, made you jump in? Like what gave you that push to start making AN videos?
When I first made my first video, it wasn't necessarily about antinatalism, but it was during a period when I was kind of like not really sure what to do with my life. So I had just like dropped out of high school and I got a GED, and I was kind of just lingering around it. I didn't really know what to do with myself. So the day I did my GED test, I kind of walked back to my house, and then I did the first video just kind of spontaneously. So I'd say that was my first kind of like showing myself a little bit, was that Prelude I video.
Okay, wow.
But it took a little bit to finally get into the anti-natalist because I wasn't necessarily willing to jump in quite yet, because
Sure.
I was kind of had some reservations. I wasn't 100% sure about how I felt about the whole philosophy, but I was definitely pessimistic leaning. So I just had some kind of like inklings with some of the philosophical stuff, but I don't know. I guess I just at the time I couldn't come up with anything better, so I was just like, this just wins. So I couldn't come up with anything that would beat it. So I just felt like I automatically had to just be a part of it until there's something else that says it's not true. So, and for the most part there hasn't been anything. So it's pretty dry.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for your insight into that. I mean, the Prelude, is it Prelude I or Prelude One, or is it Prelude I? Insanity to Come. That's an incredibly powerful video series, a 3-part series. I've always wanted to ask you about those videos. Actually, it's just for get a GED and make that the same day. I mean, that's that's a pretty incredible. It's a hell of a first video series. Can you tell me anything more about those videos? Like what?
I
How
would
can I ask you how old you were as well?
I was around 19 years old, and
Okay.
I was kind of like in this kind of like relationship with another woman, and like that kind of like inspired some of me to be like, more than myself for a little while.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of what, it's kind of like the epitome of me, I guess you could say, is like
Yeah.
just for like I don't know, my quirkiness and all that. So I wouldn't necessarily say the video is very good for philosophy, but I would say it's good for like just like me, you know if you want a flavor of that. So I would say I had some old ideas that were kind of I have thrown out, but yeah, the video itself is still definitely very good picture of who I was.
Yeah, it's an incredible self-portrait for sure. And like I said, I think they're incredibly powerful videos, especially that first part with the music and even like just the clock behind you. I mean, it's got very good mise en scène, as they say. Do you like do you feel differently about those videos now? Like, what's it
Um,
like
I
being
would say
outside
that
of it?
there was one thing. I had a little bit of magical thinking back then. I kind of believed that if I can realize the nature of reality, if I can realize the nothingness kind of behind everything, that everything would kind of disappear. This was kind of like an idea I had for a long time, but I kind of realized that the universe and logic aren't necessarily the universe is kind of independent of reason.
Yeah.
And so I had this saying that would say, a void remains a void because it is a void. And the problem with that is that the universe doesn't necessarily care. Like it just will be
Right.
for no reason. And so that's part of the metaphysics that I'm kind of heavily into, is like, what is existence, and is existence provable? And I would say that, you know, we're kind of limited by consciousness. So whenever you look at something, it's kind of like that's a part of consciousness. And so
Right.
when you talk about independence of consciousness, you can't really verify it because that's what we are. And so ultimately, everything outside of this field, the context,
Yeah.
is kind of speculation. But that's more metaphysics.
Though you of course had older channels, it was truly the Evilus Annihilus Ulse channel that I was first introduced to you with. Absolutely love that channel. I was sad to see that so many of the videos are gone now, though they of course can be found in your unlisted playlist, which is really cool. Can you tell me a little bit about the history of that channel and the work that you've made for it?
Yeah, that was definitely meant to be like my dark side channel where I'm kind of more dour, kind of more, down on everything.
Yeah.
So I definitely wanted that channel to be more just dark. So that's kind of where I started with the antinatalism stuff. And I think I did like a shock video. Like for my first video, I did like this gore video, but it got taken down really fast.
I remember that though.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but that it actually still exists. Someone uploaded it and it hasn't been taken down
Oh,
somehow.
wow.
Yeah, someone it's still there somehow, but if you can find it. But yeah, that was like the first video I ever did. And it's pretty amateur, but that was definitely it was definitely the starting point for this kind of very dark theme going ahead in my life. And so it kind of represented that kind of just this dark place I was going in, just besides the philosophy.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, the whole channel had an incredibly dark flavor to it that was unique to your other channels. I mean, it definitely had its own mood, and then it seemed to sort of, you made this other video I think called Stable that it was a very different shift and very beautiful
Oh
video.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's mostly because I don't know if I should talk about it because as soon
entirely
as
up
you
to you.
start, as soon as I mention like like a diagnosis or like a symptom of like a mental thing, it's kind of like people might dismiss me, but that's okay. I kind of like yeah, I definitely had like a psychosis kind of like around February of 2015. And so that was kind of like a video I made kind of briefly after that period.
Yeah.
And so it was definitely, yeah, very dark because the medications I got put on were kind of they were really bad. So yeah, it took me multiple years to get off of that. So but I'm on stuff again, but it's not the same. So thankful for that.
Good, good. I hope it's been helpful to you. I mean, look, I've been on medication myself and gone through years of having to get off of it, and it's not an easy thing at
No.
all. So I sympathize. I really do. The tagline of your Josiah S. Cooper channel is "Eyeless Philosophy, Brainless Psychology," which is a great. I'm probably tagline is not the right word, but I wasn't sure what else to call it. Can you talk a little bit about the meaning behind that?
Um, so eyeless is kind of like for a time I was kind of doing this purist kind of thing where I was doing this kind of like pure logical deduction. So eyeless philosophy was this idea that if you remove observation, then you kind of just have this logic thing, and it kind of just is like this purity of thought, and the
Yeah,
brain, the psychology is like this purity of feeling. So it was kind of like just separating philosophy and psychology as just these two major avenues that I was primarily interested in. I don't think I want to make it more deep than that, but
yeah.
it's definitely something that it's definitely I guess a tagline would be fun to call it.
Yeah, it's a great encapsulation of the mood and flavor, if that's a good word
Yeah,
for it, of the channel. Yeah,
psychology and philosophy kind of, side by side. I feel like they're not there's this I forget, I'm not sure what to call it, but it's metacognition. It's
sure. Yeah,
thinking about thinking. And so I feel like if you think about thinking, it's kind of like how we think and why we think and what's behind our motivations when we say something or do something. And
right.
that's definitely why I see philosophy and psychology side by side.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You're a very skilled video maker. I mean, you just described your older work as amateur, but I definitely didn't see it that way at all. Very your videos were all like little experimental movies. I mean, that's the way I saw them. Very very high quality. I mean, did you learn video and editing skills like all on your own, or did you perhaps study it in high school? How did you learn all that?
It was pretty much on my own. I just I just had this kind of like I don't know, I just really wanted to convince people like this, life on Earth is like just this, extremely dangerous thing, and probably don't want to mess with it. So that's kind of what inspired me to start doing videos. But beyond that, yeah, I just kind of pretty much everything I've done is self-learned for the most part. And I could definitely do better, and I definitely want to do better. So
Well, yeah, did you teach yourself like music as well, or did you play
oh
music
yeah,
as a
pretty
kid?
much. Pretty much.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, as I, I told you in the past, I mean, I just, I really do wish like some black metal band would just snap you up and like, pay you big amounts of money to make their videos, because you
I
just
used to be
absolutely.
I used to be a part of a black metal band.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we kind of fell out, but and he still does stuff on his own, but it was kind of like before antinatalism and all that kind of happened for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I've definitely been a part of like we did a battle of the bands thing. So
Cool.
I've done that before. So I don't know about the future for music, but we'll see. I definitely I want to do more.
Sweet, sweet. Were you playing the drums at the time?
Yeah, pretty much the
Okay.
drums at the time. And I
Sweet.
haven't been able to play drums, but I have a piano, thankfully. So
Yeah. Drums are hard because if you live in, it's a lot of
yeah,
noise. So
it
yeah.
is. Yeah.
I'd love to get a drum set myself, but it's impossible here. But yeah, no, you're kind of a master at harnessing a dark mood, a dark aesthetic. You're just really great at it. So you had this great send off at the end of a lot of your videos on the Evilist channel, and I should have written it down. I apologize, I didn't. But can you say it now? Do you remember what it was? It was something like "Evil is."
Oh, I forget. I think it was like "End the End of Alls" or something,
Something like that. Yeah.
or "Evil is." But yeah, that name was mostly just because I think I went through like a breakup at the time, and that kind of
Okay.
made that was just a part of the I was kind of in a more, yeah, like I said, just dark mood. So
Right.
I wouldn't want to go too deep into the name, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fair. No, I mean, I just want to say, I mean, I was really worried about you at the time. I mean, you were, at the time, I had no idea how isolated you were, and I didn't realize until years later that like we were sort of the only ones seeing you.
Yeah.
You were showing us
And then, and you still pretty much are for the most
yeah,
part, but
yeah,
I'm not as bad. I wouldn't say I mean, I would say things are worse, but also not as bad in some ways.
yeah.
It's kind
I
of
get
like a
you.
mixed bag, you
Same.
know.
Yeah. I hear
Yeah.
you. I hear you. I'm curious what thoughts you might have about how these ideas affect mental health. I mean, for me, they have been extremely positive, but for others, I know it's not the case.
I
So
would
what's it like
say
for you? Yeah.
I would say I've experienced both. I feel like early on it was kind of like comforting to have like these videos of I would just watch, and it would feel like I was there with you all in some ways,
Yeah.
like just watching the video. And so in that regard, I would say this relatability and this camaraderie was definitely very helpful. I would just say that like there was a part of like later on, I would say kind of became, but it wasn't necessarily like the philosophy's fault or the community's fault. It was more just like I had like OCD, and I felt like I wasn't good enough. And I'm sure you could argue that, but definitely like this wasn't good enough. Voice was kind of like just like extremely intense, and I would say that was more the negative aspect of like the philosophy, like if you put OCD into it. So it's not necessarily the philosophy's fault. I would say it's definitely a helpful thing to have people to relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel exactly this. Well, especially when you're putting so much creativity into it, and there's this like kind of well, I don't want to call it a burden, but I'll call it that just for the sake of, I'm not sure what other word to use. It's like when there's sort of a burden of activism and what you can bring to it.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's easy to
that's
feel like you're not
definitely,
doing enough. Yeah.
you can definitely go down a nasty path if you let yourself, but
Totally. Yeah. I've been there myself for sure. It was around this time though that I believe you became the first person to do two different things. First person ever to do two different things. The first being, I think you were the first person to ever make antinatalist t-shirts.
Maybe, I don't know. Someone might have made one, but yeah, I think it was I think I made one or two, I forget, but I think I made two. One was like a right to die within Mendam, but yeah, I definitely I guess so. I don't know. I guess that was the first. Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure you were, because I also made some really early on. I had like an antinatalist t-shirt contest like 2013 or something. So
And
really
you're
early.
wearing, where'd you get the shirt you're wearing?
This is so this is the logo of the podcast, and there's an artist by the name of Life Sucks, who, I don't know if you've seen his videos. Excellent. I also have interviewed him on the show, and this is his design, and he prints these shirts himself.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he
I
also
like
did
that one.
yeah, I love the shirt. He also did the world's first antinatalist coloring book recently. Highly recommend. It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah, so I do think you were, I think you were absolutely the first to do it. Do you still have any of those? Are those designs still available anymore? Is that something that you want to do again at some point?
Maybe if I could dig it up, like if I find a way to dig it up somewhere, maybe I could find it.
Very cool. Very cool. They're very neat. I really love those. The second thing I think you were the first person to do was in performing an antinatalist protest on the streets. So on June 3rd, 2014, I mean, like 5, 6 years before anybody else would do anything of the kind. 2014 is like bananas, like compared to the development of the movement since past that. You put up a video called "Antinatalism One Man Protest," in which you take a sign out on the streets for passing cars to view, saying "Stop procreation and suffering." Yeah, again, I just can't even begin to tell you how ahead of your time you were to do such a thing. So yeah, what prompted that? What was it like? Is that something you would ever do again?
I definitely haven't done it many times in my life, but I did do it like a second time, but it wasn't recorded. It was kind of like in the intersection, in a popular intersection. I would kind of like hold up a sign that said "why," so it was kind of like "why" and then question mark. So I did it at least two times, but it definitely takes some bravery. And at the time, I was kind of just feeling kind of in despair with my life. So that kind of helped me in some ways to kind of feel motivated to not really care about what people thought. And I would say, I don't know, I don't know. I definitely could do more. So I definitely have lots of ideas, and it's definitely very, I don't know, I would like to see more of that, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, no, it was incredibly ballsy thing to do. I'd love to do some of that kind of stuff myself. I haven't yet. Um,
Yeah.
the only other person I can think of that did anything like that, maybe before you did, is that Conference Report did of also went out into public with a sign saying something like "Stop having kids" or something, like dressed in his rabbit outfit. But he was making fun of us. Like he
Yeah.
was basically saying like none of you would do something like this. And then I don't. Did just out of curiosity, did you do that as a response to him?
Uh, I actually don't remember seeing that video at the time, so it was just on my own for the most part.
Okay,
So
cool. Yeah, it's a very obscure video. I mean, I don't even have a
yeah,
copy of it or anything. I wanted to at least mention a little bit about the Anomic Individual 87 channel, which is sort of a channel dedicated to something like Grey Tai Cho style and Mendham, clip videos. It's a great channel. But you also like did a great job featuring other people as well, which I don't think anybody else really kind of had before that. Some of the people, some of these people like are not really around anymore, or not really making videos anymore. But great videos of Tuween Tuo, Mike Bowl. I mean, I was sad to see some of those videos no longer public, but
yeah. I mean,
excellent.
I could make them. I was definitely like going through a period where I was kind of like, I didn't want, some at some point you kind of feel like you have like too many eyes on you, and
Oh, definitely.
for a
Yeah.
little while, for a little while at least, I kind of needed to just, have my own space. But I would say I feel a bit differently nowadays, in that that's why I put them all publicly so you can still find them, but they're unlisted technically. But I definitely could make them public again if people actually want to see that. But there you go.
No, I'm more than. I mean, please don't take my asking about them as any kind of pressure to make them
No, it's
public
okay.
or anything.
Like,
They're. I just want to highlight how great they are, and I certainly have enjoyed them. I definitely think Revolt to Extinction is my favorite for anybody that goes and finds it, because it's not only a clip of Piero and Gary, but it's also like, you add your own like artistic response to it. That's a great video. I think you've done a really good job of being your own, archivist, which is something that I wish more people did,
yeah.
Have you lost any videos over time?
Um, uh, I feel like maybe I feel like I lost the dead one, but someone uploaded. So the first shock video I ever did, I feel
Oh,
like
sure.
I lost that, but someone else uploaded that. And so I would say I've done, yeah, I have done a pretty good job at, I pretty much have every single video I can think of for the most part. So yeah, I definitely done a good job for myself. Yeah.
On the W.U.L.D channel is this incredible, 10 and a half hour compilation called Void Love, 2010, 2019, unlisted mementos, which features lots and lots and lots of old material. It is extremely powerful to watch. I'm not all the way through it yet, but I'm well into it. Altogether, it creates an amazing documentary of your life. Would just love to hear about sort of how and why you assembled this collection.
I kind of, in some ways, it's kind of like this is how I move on. This is how I feel like I can move on now. And so, the book I gave you, The Known and the Unknown. I forget, like it was the one with it has color, it has like my pictures on it and stuff like that. I feel like I gave that to you.
I got it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love, yeah, it's beautiful.
So that one's definitely kind of like in the same vein. It's kind of like just everything. It's kind of like a way for me to move on from a certain point in my life. And I do plan to make that book public again, but for whatever
Oh,
reason, it
good.
kind of I had like technical issues where when like there was like some technical issue, but I'll probably make it public again. And it was just because I was in a pretty dark period in 2020. I feel like most of us kind of
Oh, yeah,
experienced some of that.
definitely.
But yeah, and I had like a failed project with I know this is another question of yours, but it's a failed project with someone who was going to narrate some of my writings. But yeah, it was just kind of a dark period, and you know, I'm kind of thankful I'm not in as bad a place anymore.
Yeah.
So in some ways it was yeah, like I said, just a way to move on from kind of the darker aspects of the kind of mental illness aspects of my life.
That makes 100% sense. Yeah, absolutely. Like as a way of like encapsulating it and putting it to one side. And I can definitely see that in this too. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this later. I love all your books. I honestly think this might be my favorite one.
Yeah, that one's definitely the most graphical. So I
It's
probably
beautiful.
I don't actually have have one, but
Are you
but I def
serious?
yeah, I sent two. So one to you and then the other one's to Kevin
To Kevin,
Pinkerton.
do you want? I mean, I hate for you to
No, it's
not have a
cool.
copy of your
I
work.
was probably gonna like get one for myself so you can keep that. But yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely probably my favorite kind of like presentation at least. So
It's a great format for you. It's a really great format for you because it's almost like watching. Well, it is literally like looking at stills of your videos, obviously, but also the photography, and it's yeah, it's excellent. It's definitely. Well, I really am honored that you sent me a copy, and it was lovely that you sent Kevin a copy as well. Thank you so much. At some point, you released this incredible video of some of your writing being read by this like wonderful British voice actress. We just spoke a little bit about that just a minute ago. It was absolutely beautiful. And she did an incredible job. I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about this project and how it ended up. And listen, I just want to say, I don't blame you at all for that being like a depressing, turn of events, that not working out. I would have been devastated.
Yeah, it was just I don't know if I want to speak about this publicly, but
Sure. Of course.
it was definitely yeah, it was I would just say that it was definitely not because I wanted to cancel it. It was just because I couldn't. I felt like I was going through some personal stuff, and I guess I will minimally say that I didn't want to cancel it. It was just because I felt like I couldn't do it at the time. So just like there wasn't a way to do it at the time. So I don't know. We'll see in the future, but if I can, find something else to do, because yeah, it's kind of too late now. So
I hear you. Yeah, no, things happen. In 2018, you had another like really extremely creative period, with lots of amazing videos around that time. You were challenging yourself, to not use a lot of technology, no computers for a while there, and recording a lot of your music through old tape recorders. Are you still doing a lot of tape recorder experiments?
I definitely want to do more. I just yeah, I went through another period. Like I seem to go through this like I sell everything and then like I have to get it back.
Uh,
So I've done that like in 2018 I kind of sold most of my things, and then I went through like a similar period where I kind of didn't have a computer for a while, and I thankfully have one again. So
good.
that's how I'm able to do this, and just good timing that you chose now. So
Yeah. Excellent.
and yeah, it definitely yeah, you definitely have to be creative if you don't have a computer. So writing is always something. It's I guess I kind of wrote with my thumbs for a while, but it's definitely not the same without a keyboard. But still something you can do, even if you don't have a whole bunch of technology.
Yeah, no, 100%. I kind of feel like it's rare, for people to challenge themselves to go without technology, these
Oh yeah,
days. Like I
yeah,
almost can't I imagine. I'm a little
yeah.
embarrassed to say that too.
Oh, I've definitely been deprived. So I've definitely gone through my like just I had my cell phone and I would just I play Pokemon Go going outside, but
Nice.
that was like the extent of my you know the luxury for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was around this time, 2018, that I at least first remember you starting to upload a lot of these videos of yourself playing the piano. Really beautiful videos, so many haunting songs. And in 2017, that what you started the most recent channel, W.U.L.D. What does the word W.U.L.D mean? Is it an acronym?
Well, yeah, that was kind of so I was kind of so at that point in my life I was like I went to this like strange school where you basically sit at a computer and there's like teachers on the side, but you don't really interact with anyone. So I was just able to like write on the computer and not really do schoolwork.
Okay.
So that's kind of where that came from. Is I was kind of in another dark period where I was kind of like I don't know, thinking about death and stuff more like that more. So it was just like yeah, it's an anagram for worthless, useless, lifeless, dead. But it was also kind of like to rhyme with mold, which is it's kind of like the world, but it's like my own kind of perspective of it. So I called it wold.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
So it's kind of got multiple layers, but I don't. It's it's definitely a word to kind of like this is how I see things, and what better way to say it than just make my own word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Wold, so it has its origins pretty far back from you, like from school, because I did find on the Wold or a channel, it might have been on the Josiah S. Cooper channel, I don't remember actually, but it was like a proper black
Yeah.
metal song from 2012.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely want to do more. I just like I'm pretty limited for the most part, but I definitely want to do more. Writing is just one of the easiest things to do for
Oh
me,
yeah.
because I naturally just think a lot, and honestly I rarely get deep sleep, and I'm most as weird as it sounds, I'm mostly thinking like always. There's like always like this monologue going. So writing is just one of the easiest things to produce, but I definitely want to do everything else.
Oh, so under the name of W.U.L.D, you released an album called W.U.L.D, which I love. I've listened to it many, many times at this point. It's gorgeous. Can you tell me about the process of putting this project together?
Yeah, that was definitely like a different period of my life where I was kind of I guess I was pushing myself more, and I would say it's definitely a part of my life that's haunted me because, you're because I got to see what my potential was to some extent. I'm like, if I don't push myself, it's kind of like this, it's like this part where you feel like you're a ghost of yourself if you're not. So I went
Definitely.
through a period where I was kind of like I felt like a ghost of my former self from the 2018 period, but that's definitely where the album was inspired from, and that's probably why it kind of has like a eerie kind of haunting
Yeah.
kind of feel to it, is because that's kind of the way I felt, going away from that period was kind of like this lost potential, and that's kind of haunted me. And so I would say that that was definitely the hardest thing for me to let go of, is kind of feeling like I'm not good enough and stuff like that. So that's kind of what the album is. It's called Whole because it's, that's kind of like the nature of life. We're kind of always going to one thing to the next, and we're never really had enough. So that's part of why I called it what it was.
Why you called it why you called it W.U.L.D?
Whole,
Oh,
like when
yeah.
the kind of like separated, like it's W hyphen, and then it's just meant to
Oh, okay.
describe the kind of like incompleteness of everything, kind of just like how we're never really kind of satisfied and we're just going from that one thing to the next, and that's
Right.
mainly what it's about.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, that was actually my next question was, because this term, I was calling it W holes, but I didn't realize it was.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it's just like, whole, and then there's nothing's really kind of, we're never really like satisfied. We're just kind of always kind of
Yeah.
striving for the next thing.
Right. Right. No, that makes so much sense. Is it still possible to like order the album?
Um, like I always wanted to do like a cassette thing, so I would
Oh,
like
yeah.
make like individual like dub cassettes, but yeah, you can definitely still listen to it for free, I think. So it's still for free.
Yeah.
And it should be with all the other links that are on, I guess you'll list later, but
Yeah. Yeah. I know it was available on Amazon at one point. I just like I missed the
oh
opportunity to
yeah,
grab
yeah.
it.
That was a slightly different version, but the one that's for
Oh,
free is the one that's mostly cassette. The
okay.
one that was on Amazon was kind of more not cassette recording, but
Okay.
I think that just got removed. I'm not sure if it got removed, but I think it was
Yeah.
just
It's not
like
available anymore.
yeah, it was just a Amazon thing. They're not like doing that service anymore, or I forget what it was,
Oh,
but
okay, okay. So I'd love to spend some time talking about each of your books. I admit I found it hard to write like many questions about each individually. Just like mainly just really interested in hearing you talk about each and sort of the process of writing. So your first, if I'm not mistaken, was Love Void Love. Dreams from the Abyss, Writings of Things and Other Things, with forays into harm reduction, and the final revelation is death, corporeal, Anecdote and Philosophy. This was released March 6, 2019. And the second version, if I'm not mistaken, was released March 17th, 2019. I actually was lucky enough that I know I ordered one of them, but you then sent me two other
yeah,
versions. So I have three versions of Love Void Love, which I'm very proud to
yeah.
own.
I would say the main reason those aren't public anymore is mostly just because I wanted to kind of condense it all into the known and the unknown. So I would say it was mostly just because I wanted the known and the unknown to be the precedent for the most part. And so that's why I'm probably going to make that public again. It was just mostly just because I was I don't know, I guess I wanted to update what my current, what I think currently and stuff like that. That was also another reason why I kind of like And so I have made a new book, and so I feel like the other book could definitely still just be up to showcase kind of like that period of my life. And so for the most part, those other books are kind of like, I guess they're kind of like the building up to the known and the unknown, and then what I've done currently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. May I ask what the name means? Love Void Love.
The final a Love Void Love is kind of more like, like I kind of had a nickname when I was a teenager. It was kind of like Loveless, and it was kind of like part of that, but it's also just kind of like being without love,
Yeah.
kind of like something like that, yeah, or just kind of like this attraction to death is kind of what that's about. But the final revelation is death is more this idea. Well, I guess it kind of falls in with atheism, but it's also this other idea that I had that, if you realize the nothingness, then everything kind of ceases to be. But that was kind of something I threw out later on, but it still kind of fits as kind of like this atheistic kind of perspective of just like when you die, that's it kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned many people within the anti-natalist community at the beginning of the book, including me. So thank you so much for that, Josiah. But you have a special mention of our poor Jawoon, Hung, who, and you thank him for, a quote unquote, the creative idea of writing this book. Can you speak more about the ways Jawoon, influenced you to write Love, Void Love?
I bought his book, and so that was definitely what got me into the idea that I could just write stuff. And so it kind of is thanks to him, because I didn't really buy anyone else's books. I haven't been able to buy anyone. I definitely want to though, but he was definitely what gave me the idea to start writing more. So I would say that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I bet he would love to hear that, Um, so as I said, there's three different versions. Besides the mention of Jawoon, what is the difference between the three besides the shape?
I would say that I kind of was being a bit OCD, so I was kind of like, oh, is this the way I really want to make it? And I was kind of like, kind of compulsively kind of um releasing different versions, and I was like, is this the way I want it to be? And so it was kind of a bit of a compulsive decision. So I'm just going to be honest about that. It was kind of like I was kind of struggling with, how do I want this to be? And so I ultimately just put it into the known and the unknown, and decided that's the one I kind of want to represent this period of my life.
Right. Okay. All right. Absolutely. Yeah. No. Thank you again for sending me these.
Of
I'd love
course.
to. I'd love to return the favor. By the way, if you want one of these shirts, I'll be happy to send you one. And yeah, it'd be awesome.
That'd
It's
be
up to
cool.
you. There's another book that's no longer available. It's no longer available. It's called A Mess of Philosophy, Schizophrenia, and Benzodiazepine Withdrawal. What is this book? I wasn't able to nab a copy in time. Is that?
Yeah, I think that was just I basically just decided that I wanted something more ultimate, and so I decided to take that down and make it a part of like I said, just the known and the unknown, and just have that be the representative book for that part of my life. But it was just kind of like a compulsive decision at the time to release that, but I changed my mind. So I'm just being honest, like it was just kind of a compulsive thing. But yeah, there you are.
Yeah, no, nothing wrong with that. Well, we already, mentioned the known and the unknown a couple of times. Void Love, Mementos, and Esoteric Writings. Yeah, just once again, I mean, I really do love this. I mean, it's just if I can just show off like some of the, it's got the, just beautiful photography in there. It's like it's a magazine style, but it just does such a good job of featuring these little peeks into your life, but also your videos. And it's just a great, encapsulation of everything that you produce. There's your cat.
Yeah, he's cute.
He's
Yeah,
adorable. Yeah. Features rather
he's
prominently.
thankfully being quiet. He's usually kind of like, yeah. So he's thankfully being quiet right now.
Yeah, I remember in some of your videos from like 2018, I'd constantly be squawking in the back.
Yeah, he's really vocal. Yeah.
Yeah, he's adorable. So your latest book is The Point. It came out just very, very recently, December 29th, 2021. Yes, I really enjoyed this. I'm just really interested in hearing anything you have to say about this.
I would say it was kind of like written mostly during this dark period. So a majority of the writing is kind of done when I was like having panic attacks, and that was kind of like an outlet for me. So I would kind of like think about metaphysics, or I would talk about mental health. So I kind of do both of those in the book, but it's kind of like this, it's like a schizophrenic kind of like, or disorganized kind of like clusterfuck of just many different ideas, and just
Yeah,
the shit I was going through. And I'm just being honest about that because
yeah,
it's like, I think I lowered the price to like $3.72 or something like that. But it's I would say I'm pretty satisfied with the writing I did.
yeah,
But it's definitely not the usual kind of thing, because it's very, I purposefully kind of made the font just explode, and I was kind of messy.
yeah.
And so that was more just to kind of express my kind of existential crisis that I was kind of going through. So
Yeah.
it was definitely more of an existential crisis, I would say, in that. So I'm kind of more like no reason for anything. I'm kind of like freaking out over that, and just like this panic kind of fueled kind of energy that went into it, I would say is it's definitely, yeah, that's definitely what I would encapsulate the book as.
No, it's I mean that definitely comes through. It's a powerful piece. Especially in the parts where you're like repeating the same thing over and over. I mean, I can definitely get
Oh
the
yeah.
anxiety in there. Yeah. I'm really curious about like the open AI. Are these like
Oh yeah. So that was just like that was more like I'm gonna, yeah, it was more just like I was kind of using it to bounce off my thoughts. So it's not majority of the book, it's more just like
right?
kind of more near the part where you saw the repetition is kind of like this. I'm just using this kind of drive across this kind of like this insanity kind of thing. And for the most part, the book is what I wrote, and
Yeah.
the open AI was more just to kind of to bounce off of what I wrote for the most part.
Right. Right. I really love those parts though, because it was like
Oh yeah.
having a conversation. I don't know how to really quite describe it. Like having a
It was
conversation with
like,
something else about
yeah.
what you're thinking, and then like seeing where you meet. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like this. The open AI is like the latest technology for AI in general. So it's basically come a long way, and it's, I don't know, it's pretty convincing at times, but you can't. It does get a bit bonkers, but it's definitely very interesting because it kind of is like, this is what's eventually we'll just be able to talk to robots and stuff like that, and it's very lonely, I would say. It's also kind of like this,
Yeah.
you know this kind of like back and forth from nothing. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's a no, it's a very meaningful exercise though. Um, and yeah, I just think it ended up really being very effective in the book. So yeah, I mean, I highly encourage everybody to go pick up The Point. On it's available on Amazon. Do you think this one will stay available for a while, or?
Oh, that should definitely. And I have like this kind of like mock-up version of like something different. It's kind of a bit more insane,
Ooh.
but and that they're both pretty cheap. So it's not like, if you don't like it that much, it's like only like a few bucks if you have like Amazon Prime. So I'm not really making much money from that. So it's more just, to have something to hold. And I kind of like that. So that's why I kind of just like having my own books to hold and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. I completely understand that. So this is another project that's coming out soon.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, this one
What's it called?
is mostly just, it's kind of written in a more kind of like I don't know, kind of like in this kind of like in encrypted kind
Yeah.
of way, and it's more just focusing on kind of the mental illness aspect, and I'm kind of like, I guess, capitalizing on kind of the kind of like quirkiness of my brain,
Yeah.
and so I'm pretty self-aware of that, and
Yeah.
I'll be honest and as upfront as possible on it. Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. No, I look forward to that. That's great. I'm really happy that you're doing so much writing, and it's a really great medium for you.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, so antinatalism is it's fairly new as a subject matter for artists. And honestly, like we kind of were some of the first to get a crack at it, which is pretty cool. It's kind of amazing. So what about antinatalism do you find to be inspiring?
I would say it definitely makes you feel kind of special, yeah, to be a part of something that is kind of like doesn't make sense. It's like, why does antinatalism exist in like, doesn't really make sense as like a biological feature, and it's kind of like this unique
Yeah.
rebellion. And so I guess like the rebellion aspect of it is kind of like attractive, and then there's just kind of, my own dislike of life in general is kind of, it naturally feeds into that. So I would say it's inspiring in the dark sense. So like all these, these things that people don't usually talk about, it's like we can express it through antinatalism in some regard. And I would say it's a very unique platform for this kind of dark and macabre subject matter. Where and it's already like controversial on its own, but it's like, yeah, it's just like, it's like there's like no limit to, I guess, how dark you can get, because life gets pretty dark, and there's always something you know to talk about in that regard.
100%. No, extremely well said. Yeah, it is almost like I don't know. It is in its own way like pulling the lid off of Pandora's box. It just gives a foothold into that. And yeah, absolutely. Have you ever considered submitting your videos to like film festivals?
Maybe in the future, I kind of want something more my own,
Yeah,
more purely my own, because in some of the videos I kind of use more other people's content, and I explain that it's more just like media, but like music and stuff like that. But I guess I would have to make something that's more purely my own, and I would have to feel pretty confident and proud in it.
sure.
Just maybe eventually I'll come up with something that I can do maybe.
Excellent. Excellent. What do you think of the antinatalist community as it exists today?
I would say it kind of makes me sad that there's so many different branches. It's kind of like, I feel like that weakens the kind of like the momentum a little bit, that
Yeah.
there's all these different little, but it's like understandable at the same time. Everyone has their reason for why humans should stop procreating. So in some regards, you kind of have to have a different branch for like environmentalists and just pure sufferingists, or whatever you want to call them, ethilists. But I guess I wish there was kind of a bit more unification on the suffering front. But I understand that there's also the environmental aspect, and some people are still, I don't know, think life is like, I don't know, something to save. But I guess that's something we'll have to, you know, I don't know if we'll ever bridge that gap, but yeah, I guess I would like to see more camaraderie, and less judgmental, kind of less more focused on just shit talking each other. But I guess, yeah, I guess I'm happy that it's still growing.
Yeah, no, everything you said pretty much mirrors my own thoughts. There's some aspects of our diversity in thought that is really cool, because it does mean that it attracts some kernel of this idea attracts like an incredibly large number of people. But it would be really good for the sake of preventing the suffering if we got along better, you know, as a whole, as a community,
Yeah,
we could actually get more done. Um, and yeah, I mean, it gets very contentious, unfortunately, a lot of times,
for
and
sure.
that's unfortunate. What kind of activism would you like to see people engaging in more?
Um, I don't know, just like if you have something to say, just say it. Like it's taken me a really long time to just stop caring what people think for the most part. And I still care a little bit, but like it is really difficult to like put your face out there and like have your name next to you because in some regards you can never really get that back. Once you put your name, once you put your face, it's like you're never gonna you can't start fresh again for the most part unless you change your identity. So
Right.
I would say that's definitely the hardest part of getting into YouTube and stuff like that. But definitely you don't have to show your face. You can still like do the philosophy dub video, or you know, you can write or you can create artwork. So that there's still plenty you can do if you're not willing to like show your face and have your name out there. But I don't know, YouTube is I don't know, it's you can do lots of stuff on YouTube. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but that's important for people to remember. There's a lot of roads into this thing, and it doesn't have to be putting your full identity out there. And yeah, do you have any thoughts on what the future of antinatalism looks like?
Um, I think it's very it's very hopeful, but it's like too little too late sometimes.
Yeah.
Like if we're all gonna I don't know if we're all gonna die anytime soon, but if we were, then it would be kind of like too little too late. But there's always an opportunity for you to get involved, and I definitely see anti-needlism growing because I feel like the world is definitely more pessimistic leaning after what's happened. And I think
Absolutely.
that's an opportunity for us to get more people to come towards our side.
Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think that antinatalism will continue to be an important part of your work?
Definitely. I I kind of do my best to I just want to be as honest a thinker, if that makes any sense. Like I just don't I want to be like if an idea is like strong, then it will withstand whatever comes its way. So basically I'm just like I'm looking for a way to like make anti-neoliberalism not the way it is. I don't want the the perspective to be so grim and
Yeah.
brutal. If there was a way to like make this make sense, then I would be totally open for it. I just haven't found it. And that's kind of I anti-natalism will probably always be a part of my work, is because I'm probably never gonna have kids. I can't imagine. Like I
Yeah.
could never like that just makes no sense to me. So just even personally, like it doesn't make sense. But you know, just other people having kids, I just don't get it. But
Right.
you know, yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. Yeah, is there anything that we haven't talked about already that you're working on currently that you want to talk about a little bit?
I definitely want to do more videos. Speaking of, I guess this is a pretty nice because I haven't really shown my face very much as much. But I'm on like I'm a pretty accessible person. Like if you really want to see what I'm up to, then you can probably like find me on Facebook, or you could go to my various YouTube channels if you really wanted to know. And I have emails everywhere, so yeah, I'm pretty easy to reach if you really want to you know, see what I'm up to for the most part. But I guess in the meantime, I'm kind of thinking of like more video work, and because I'm kind of finished with writing, I think, for a little bit. So more
Okay,
video work, maybe music.
great. I mean, that sounds awesome. Well, I mean, where can people find you? You have a lot of channels and links and everything. And how can
Yeah.
people, continue to help support your work? Is there a place people can donate?
Yeah. I mean, I never want to force anyone to do that, but obviously it'd be appreciated always. But if you want to find me, then I have like a link tree that it's pretty simple. It's just Wold at the end. So Yeah, you probably, that's a simple way to link to most of my stuff. And you know, if you want to support me, then I'm happy for it. But for the most part, I'm a person who, I just do stuff because I like, if because it's satisfying for me to do it. Like I don't need, for the most part, I don't need people to like, I don't need a huge audience, and I'm not the most popular person. I'm pretty self-aware of that, but I'm also okay with that. I can, you know, I can keep doing what I'm doing, and even if no one really appreciated it that much, but I would hope they do, but I can keep on going, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I will put a large abundance of your links below. Definitely everybody go check it out, and please support the work of Josiah S. Cooper. Josiah, there's absolutely no question that you've really been through a lot, and you've suffered a lot, and you've shown us that suffering in this very honest portrait, in dramatic raw detail at times. But through it all, you really have produced this incredible, valuable, large volume of work, in multiple mediums. And I really do hope that you're proud of what you've accomplished artistically throughout these years. And though I absolutely loathe the term true artist, I really do think that it fits you well. You're a natural poet, again, in many mediums. I think poetry can come in many mediums. And you really are an inspiration to myself and my own work. And I hope to anybody that comes to ideas like antinatalism and ephilism and is, faced with these questions of, how do we live after we know? How do we continue to exist after we understand? What do we do with that understanding? Does it destroy us? Does it help put us back together? I find that in your work. I find that struggle, and it's just been very meaningful to watch that.
Thank you very much. I guess my answer to how do we live, it's pretty simple, but it doesn't mean it's easy. So the simple answer is that you don't need a reason to get up in the morning. Sometimes you can suffer and you cannot suffer for no reason. So ultimately you can just get up, and there doesn't have to be a reason for it. You can do things like pet your cat, you can write a book, and you don't actually have to have a reason. You can just do it because you want to. And there doesn't have to be a big, I mean, I kind of went go through it myself. I kind of have the existential crisis. I have the hopelessness. I have, I've had panic attacks for, the brutal panic attacks that I would be like spasming on like the floor. So I definitely know what it's like to suffer in that regard. But ultimately, I feel like we can all just keep going if we don't, we don't stress ourselves out like hugely, like the voice that's just telling you you're not good enough, that you suck. And that I feel like that voice can also, it can be motivating, but it can also destroy. So just be mindful.
100%. Yeah. Well, thank you, Josiah, for everything that you've given and shared with us throughout these years of your life and work. And thank you so much for being my guest today on the Exploring Antinatalism podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Check the description below to find Josiah's link tree, links to all of his YouTube channels, as well as a link to Amazon where you can purchase his most recent book, The Point. Thank you for listening to the Exploring Antinatalism podcast. This has been Amanda Oldfan-Suganik. You can find me on the YouTube channel Antinatal Wolf. Keep up with my daily antinatalist news updates at Antinatal News on Twitter. Please follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and you can also listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Buzzsprout, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Amazon.com, RSS feed, and so many other platforms. Email me at exploringantinatalism@gmail.com. Website designed by Visions Noirs. Please follow him at www.bilenoir.com, and you can also follow him on Instagram. Logo art by the incredible Life Sucks. Please subscribe to him on YouTube, and also check out his Etsy page at www.etsy.com/shop/lifesuckspublishing, where you can find Exploring Antinatalism podcast t-shirts. Music by the amazing I Doubt It. Subscribe to him on YouTube, and also check out our collaborative project with our friend W.W.L.D, The Right to No Longer Exist, which includes the podcast, The Right to No Longer Exist, A Right to Die podcast. All the best, and bye for now.